What if I told you a single answer on Family Feud could stop Steve Harvey in his tracks? So much so that he had to pause the show entirely. Welcome to Harvey's Highlights, the channel where we dive deep into the unforgettable, emotional, and often hidden moments behind the scenes of television's most iconic shows. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because this story will leave you speechless. It was a Thursday afternoon in Atlanta, and the Family Feud studio was alive with its usual energy. Families laughed, joked, and shouted answers as the cameras rolled. Steve Harvey, always quick with a joke and a warm smile, was in his element, teasing contestants, bantering with the audience, and keeping the game moving at its signature pace. That day, the Ramirez family from Houston was facing off against the Ellis family from Atlanta. Both teams were competitive, lively, and ready to win. But there was one contestant who caught Steve's attention immediately, 16-year-old Mia Johnson, adopted as an infant and raised in a loving family, who was standing at the end of the Ramirez family podium. Mia's presence was quiet but compelling. She didn't shout her answers or try to be the center of attention. Instead, she radiated a kind of calm awareness, a maturity beyond her years. When Steve introduced her, he knelt slightly, as he always does with younger contestants, and asked her a few warm questions. "And how old are you, sweetheart?" he asked. 16, sir," Mia replied, her voice steady but soft. "And what do you want to be when you grow up?" Mia paused, thinking carefully. "I want to help kids like me find their families." Steve's eyebrows raised. "Wow, that's big. That's real big." The audience clapped softly. Steve smiled that trademark grin, but there was a hint of something deeper in his eyes, a recognition of the weight behind her words. The game progressed as usual, families shouting answers, Steve cracking jokes, and the audience cheering. But then came a question that would change everything. Name something someone might leave behind that holds a deep personal meaning. Steve looked over at Mia, who had been quietly listening. "Mia, you got this one," he said. The studio leaned in. Cameras zoomed, lights focused. And then, in a voice that carried both vulnerability and quiet strength, Mia said, "A letter from the parents who couldn't raise you." The words fell like a hammer in the studio. Steve froze mid-laugh. The audience went silent. Crew members exchanged glances. Mia's family leaned toward her, stunned. Steve's hand shot to his face. He muttered under his breath, "Lord have mercy." Then, without a word to anyone, he dropped the cue cards he was holding and walked away from the podium. "Stop rolling," he said firmly to the production team, his voice carrying through the studio. "We're not filming anymore. This is bigger than the show." And in that moment, Family Feud ceased to be just a game. It became a stage for something far more profound. A teenager revealing a piece of her past that reminded everyone watching why love, loss, and human connection matter more than any points on a board. The studio was silent. Even the crew had paused, unsure how to proceed. Steve Harvey, usually quick with a joke or a playful comment, was standing frozen, staring at Mia with wide eyes. He crouched slightly to meet her gaze. "Mia, sweetheart, tell me more about that," he said gently. "What do you mean, a letter from the parents who couldn't raise you?" Mia took a deep breath, steadying herself. "It's from my birth parents," she explained. "I didn't even know it existed until my adoptive mom showed it to me last year. They had to place me for adoption because they couldn't care for me the way I deserved. But before they did, they wrote me a letter. They told me they loved me, that they were proud of me, and that they hoped I'd have a good life." Steve Harvey's face softened. His usual laughter, the jokes, the light-hearted banter, all of it vanished. "Baby, you mean to tell me someone took the time to leave words like that, knowing they couldn't be with you?" he whispered. Mia nodded. "Yes, sir. And I carry it with me every day. I read it when I need strength or when I feel lost. It reminds me that I am loved, even by people I never got to live with." The audience, who had been leaning forward in curiosity, now sat in stunned silence. You could hear the air in the studio hum with emotion. Steve Harvey, a man who had seen hundreds of emotional moments in his career, looked at Mia and then at the production team. "Stop the cameras," he said again, this time more firmly. "I don't care what the schedule says. We're not rolling another second. This is bigger than the game." He turned back to Mia. "Sweetheart, you just reminded me, and everybody in this room, that life isn't about points, prizes, or winning. It's about love. It's about the words people leave behind, the memories we carry, the moments that teach us what really matters." Mia's eyes shimmered with tears. "I just wanted to play the game," she whispered. Steve shook his head, smiling softly through his own emotion. "Baby, you're playing a different kind of game today. You're teaching everybody here what courage, love, and family really mean." The camera operators didn't cut. They didn't need to. Everyone present understood they were witnessing something rare, profound, and unforgettable. And in that quiet pause, with Steve Harvey kneeling beside a teenager holding a letter she never expected to share on national television, the show became a platform for something far greater than a game. Steve Harvey stepped closer to Mia, his usual playful energy replaced with reverence. He crouched down to her level, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. "Mia, you have no idea what you just did. You reminded all of us why love matters more than anything else in the world. Not points, not prizes, not the game. Love." The audience was silent, hanging on every word. Cameras rolled, capturing the rare moment when a game show became a stage for humanity. Steve reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. He handed it to Mia. "I want you to have this," he said softly. She took it, her hands trembling slightly. "It's nothing fancy, just a reminder that people see you, people care about you, and the courage you just showed, it's going to inspire more people than you can imagine." The envelope contained a handwritten note from Steve himself. "Mia, you are brave. You are loved. You are living proof that the heart is stronger than any circumstance. Carry that with you always. Steve Harvey." Tears welled in Mia's eyes as she read the words aloud. The audience quietly wiped their own tears. Even the production crew looked on, silent and reverent. Steve stood back for a moment, giving her space. "I've hosted this show a long time," he said, voice breaking slightly. "But I've never had a contestant teach me something so real in the middle of a taping. You made me stop. You made me call my wife during a commercial break just to tell her what was happening. That's how deep this moment is." He then did something no Family Feud host had ever done. He asked the entire studio to pause, the families, the audience, everyone. "I want everyone here to take a breath. Right now, we're not playing for points. We're not competing. We're witnessing life, and that's what matters most." Mia's family, usually full of nervous energy and laughs, embraced her quietly. Steve motioned to the production team to hold all cameras on her. "Let the world see her courage," he said. "Let them know that even when life doesn't go the way you expect, love leaves a mark you carry forever." The studio stayed silent for a moment, absorbing the weight of her story. The air seemed heavier, more sacred, as Steve looked down at Mia and whispered, "You are proof. Proof that love, even when it's written on paper and never fully seen, can change lives. And today it changed ours." The applause that followed was slow, deliberate, and filled with awe. It wasn't applause for winning a round or a dollar amount. It was applause for courage, for vulnerability, for a teenager who reminded the world what family and love truly mean. Even after the cameras stopped rolling, the energy in the Family Feud studio lingered. Producers, crew, and audience members couldn't stop talking quietly among themselves. What had started as a typical game show taping had transformed into something extraordinary. A raw, human moment that no one would ever forget. Steve Harvey remained beside Mia for a few minutes after the taping ended. "You know, Mia," he said softly, "you just reminded me why I do this job. Not for the lights, not for the cameras, not for the laughs, but to see moments like this. Moments that make people stop, think, and remember what really matters." Mia clutched the letter her birth parents had left her, now fully aware of the impact it had. She smiled faintly, but her eyes glistened with tears. "I never thought anyone would care about this story," she whispered. I I wanted to play the game. Steve shook his head, smiling through his own emotion. Baby, the game didn't matter. What you just did will be remembered longer than any dollar amount on that board. You reminded everyone that life isn't about the points. It's about the love we carry, the connections we make, and the courage to share our truth. Within hours, clips of Mia's answer and Steve's reaction were circulating online. Social media erupted. Viewers shared the moment with friends and family, praising the teen's bravery and Steve Harvey's empathy. Hashtags like #MiaMoment and #FamilyFeudStopped began trending nationwide. News outlets covered the story. Interviews were requested. People from all walks of life, adoptees, parents, teachers, social workers, reached out to Mia and Steve, thanking them for sharing a reminder that family isn't always about who raises you, but about the love and care that shapes you. Mia herself began receiving letters and messages from other adopted teens, sharing how much her story inspired them. Many said they felt seen for the first time. I never thought someone would understand what it means to hold onto a letter from someone you never knew, one message read. But you reminded me that love exists, even in absence. Steve Harvey continued to reflect on the day. In interviews, he described it as one of the most meaningful moments of his career. I've hosted thousands of shows, he said, and I've seen laughter, tears, triumphs, and embarrassments. But nothing hit me the way Mia's words did. I had to stop, call my wife, and just let it sink in. That's the power of honesty and love. Even months later, the moment was still discussed in production meetings. New staff members were shown the footage as an example of what Family Feud could truly be. Not just a game, but a platform for courage, humanity, and connection. The impact didn't stop with Steve and the crew. Fans wrote letters about how the story inspired them to reach out to estranged family members, to reconnect with loved ones, or to simply express appreciation for the people who had shaped their lives. Teachers and counselors used the episode in classrooms to spark discussions about adoption, family, and resilience. Mia, now aware of her influence, began volunteering at local adoption support groups. She read letters from birth parents to teenagers who had been adopted, sharing her story and encouraging them to embrace both the love they were given and the history they carry. Months after the taping, the story of Mia Johnson and Steve Harvey's reaction continued to resonate far beyond the Family Feud studio. Clips of the moment, Mia revealing the letter her birth parents left behind, Steve's pause, his kneeling beside her, and his words of encouragement, were shared across social media, drawing millions of views and countless comments. What struck people most wasn't the game itself, or the prizes, or even Steve's famous humor. It was the raw humanity in that moment. A teenager revealing a deeply personal piece of her past, a host responding with empathy and reverence, and a room full of strangers suddenly reminded of the power of love, courage, and connection. Steve Harvey spoke about the day often in interviews, reflecting on how rare such a moment is on television. I've hosted thousands of episodes, he said, and I've laughed, I've cried, I've celebrated victories and witnessed disappointments. But what Mia did, that's different. That's life teaching you something bigger than any game board. I had to call my wife during the commercial break because I couldn't hold it in. That's how real it was. For Mia, the experience changed her perspective on life and her own story. She realized that the letter her birth parents left behind, words meant to guide and comfort her in their absence, had taken on an even greater significance. By sharing it, she reminded the world that love endures, even when circumstances prevent someone from being present physically. The jacket Steve had given Ethan in a previous story had a symbolic counterpart here. Steve gave Mia a small, framed version of her birth parents' letter, accompanied by a note of his own. Mia, courage isn't measured by what you win, but by what you share. Thank you for showing the world what love really looks like. Steve Harvey. Mia kept it in her room, a daily reminder of her journey, the love she carries, and the lesson she taught a television studio and millions of viewers. That courage and honesty have the power to stop time, shift perspectives, and remind people of what matters most. The network later aired a special segment featuring the moment, and it quickly became one of the most talked about episodes of the season. Fans praised the episode not just for Steve Harvey's reaction, but for highlighting a story of adoption, resilience, and enduring love. Educators, social workers, and adoption advocates began using clips from the show to spark conversations about family, identity, and the significance of understanding one's own history. Steve himself continued to carry the lesson. He often told friends and colleagues that Mia's moment reminded him that hosting a game show isn't just about entertainment. It's about connection, he said. It's about being ready to stop, to listen, and to let people teach you what matters in life. That's the real prize. For the audience at home, and those in the studio that day, the moment was unforgettable. Mia Johnson, a quiet, thoughtful teenager, became a living example of how one person's honesty and vulnerability can create a ripple effect, inspiring courage, empathy, and awareness in thousands, if not millions, of people. If this story made you stop and think, if it reminded you of the power of speaking your truth and honoring love, take a moment to subscribe to Harvey's Highlights. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what you would have done if you were in that studio, or how Mia's answer resonates with your own experiences. And make sure to stay tuned. The next story on Harvey's Highlights will be another unforgettable journey into the moments that define us. Remember this: the game can always wait. The heart cannot. Steve Harvey's pause, Mia's courage, and the letter left behind that day will forever stand as a testament to what television can capture at its most profound. Moments of truth, love, and humanity that stopped the show and touched the world.